Hello everybody, this is Yoko's Anime Reactions, and I have another book I'd like to read. Apparently I think this is a new one. It's called The Saint's Belated Happiness, newly single, now living... Dang it, come on, here we go. Now living with the Demon Prince. It's something new. Let us see what it has. Oh, for a second I thought it was a manga. I was like, no! Okay, here we go. Prologue. It had been a month since the two of them last met. The slightly fruity fragrance of a sophisticated black tea perfumed the air, and a sweet berry tart sat on the table between them. The tea leaves were of the highest quality, and the berries used to make the tart were a rare variety that could only be harvested in extremely small quantities. Mary Light eagerly sipped at her tea, but the man sitting... Mary Light, whatever, eagerly sipped at her tea, but the man sitting opposite her showed no interest in any of it. Even then, Mary Light thought he was acting strange. Usually he was enthusiastic about afternoon tea. She was quickly drawn away from her thoughts once he began to speak. I shall be holding a ball in the royal palace soon. It'll be the talk of the town. I suppose I plan to invite beautiful ladies from all over the country to join. Oh, really? That sounds marvelous. She grinned. Marylight? Whatever. He addresses her gravely. Her smile fell when she saw the apprehensive look on his face. I shall seize this opportunity to find myself a worthy partner among them. What? Marylight uttered in a quiet voice, her eyes widening in shock. But I'm his fiancé. How could he forget? I'm sitting right in front of him. But what about me? I'm your... She trotted off exasperated, his eyebrows knitted together. Well, what did you expect? You're 27 years old now. The people would wholly reject me marrying a woman well past the prime age for... Really? The prime age for marriage is younger than 27. Really? Marylight's mouth hung open in bewilderment. However, under the intense pressure of his contemptuous gaze and cruel words, she decided her only course of action was to agree. I suppose you're right, she conceded awkwardly. In all honesty, she'd felt a vague feeling things might end up this way for a while. In this country, most people consider 24 to be the cutoff age for marriage. Oh, okay, that's stupid. But then again, it's in like a fantasy medieval world. Marylight was 3 whole years too late. A smug, satisfied smile sat on her ex-fiancé's lips. Apparently he was appeased by her quick admission of defeat. I assure you, Marylight, I am very grateful to you. Thanks to your efforts as a saint, our country has come alive with thousands of luscious trees and plants. However, that is all. I do not see any appeal in you as a member of the opposite sex. Rude! I mean, come on. She's gotta be... I'm assuming she is beautiful. Do you not think of her as beautiful? Seriously, that's usually the main attraction for a man to a woman is their looks. At least. He declared in a detached tone. She couldn't believe her ears. What she was hearing completely invalidated all of her future plans. Once, years ago, she had been engaged to another man. However, a few days before she was supposed to get married, the fact that she was a saint came to light, and a member of the palace suddenly showed up at her house. All saints had to completely give themselves up to the state. As they were not permitted to marry commoners, Marylight had her previous engagement annulled by force. Of course, there were numerous citizens who voiced their criticism over Marylight's treatment, but the king was so overjoyed to have a saint in his country that he couldn't care less. This was when she became engaged to the crown prince, Rufus, who was 23 years old at the time. They were set to get married 5 years after their engagement. Why did you wait that long if the prime age is 24? Huh? However, years after, when there had still been no preparation to speak up for said wedding, Marylight began to grow suspicious. Even so, she never imagined that Rufus had actually been looking for a new fiancé without consulting her. I understand how you feel, but can you really just decide that out of the blue? Does His Majesty know about this? Marylight hedged. That was the thing she was most worried about. The king had no concern for whether she was proper wife material for his son. Her being a saint was enough to appoint her as the crown princess without a second thought. I doubt he'd accept age as a justifiable reason to call off the wedding. Rufus simply snorted at her in reply, his nose wrinkled in a displeased grimace. I understand you may be dissatisfied with another woman becoming my princess, he huffed, and do spare me the whole, but I'm a saint talk as well. Rest assured, the matter is all taken care of. We have arranged for a large shipment of magic items to be delivered from another country. With those, we shan't need your holy powers any longer. Really? You think magic items are gonna be, enough? Those will run out. Hers might not. No, really, that's not what's bothering me, she shook her head. Tell me, has the king been informed, or... What I'm trying to say is that thanks to the technology of magic implements, the crown princess no longer needs to be a saint. Therefore, I may as well search for a young, beautiful woman to wed. Besides, such a woman would carry far more favor with the people. You, however, are going on 30 and are undeniably plain in appearance. That's mean. With one look at you standing next to me, I'm sure my father will understand my decision. Right. Although Marylight was not at all impressed by Rufus' justification, she didn't bother to argue back. If they no longer needed a saint, then there was no reason for her to stay in the palace. As his son, Rufus could probably manage to convince the king eventually. There was nothing Marylight could say to change his mind. Marylight Hardy, you must leave the palace at once, Rufus demanded in a low tone. Of course, she accepted. But, would you at least let me say goodbye to his majesty and all the servants who looked after us? After me? Oh. Leave immediately, he shouted, his cheeks turning red. Now that you are no longer my fiancé, you are nothing more than a commoner. Do you really think it appropriate for someone with no royal standing to simply waltz about our sacred abode? I wish somebody would punch him. Really, I do. Faced with his harsh words, Marylight suddenly thought of her parents. They had passed away a few years ago, believing that their daughter would go on to become royalty. Oh, that sucks. They'd be so sad if I found out about this. That was the worst part. She felt like a disappointment to them. Girl, it's not your fault. It's this jerk's decision. Chapter 1, The First Step to Happiness. It's been quite some time since I last went out by myself like this, Marylight mused to herself as she sauntered down the road with a spring in her step, her plain white dress and wide brim hat fluttering in the breeze. Looking at her, no one would guess that she'd just been dumped. And for a ridiculous reason, no less. I agree. Completely. However, that didn't bother her one bit. She wasn't sad or angry about the fact that Rufus had never seen her as attractive, especially when she felt pretty much the same way about him. Haha. Haha, she finds you ugly. You shut up. Chicken, you want it? She had never once seen him as a potential romantic partner. The main reason was that she had been far too busy to think about seriously pursuing romance. Whenever she wasn't undergoing strict training for her royal future, she was carrying out her duties as a saint of the nation. She rarely had time to see him. Well, that makes sense considering how you don't see him as a romantic partner. You don't spend time with him. When the two of them did meet, it was only once or twice a month. Yeah. It wasn't exactly the sort of time scale that could nurture a budding romance. She did her very best to fall in love with him, but in the end, she just couldn't. Attraction wasn't something that could be forced. She secretly used to worry about how she would cope with having a physical, intimate relationship with a man she didn't love. Well, you don't have to worry about that now. In many ways, it was a relief to be free of him. Despite her initial disappointment, her shoulders felt a lot lighter now. She couldn't deny that wasting 5 years of her life bothered her a little, but that feeling of regret was only a very faint one. From Marylight's point of view, this was a good thing. As breakups went, she thought theirs had been relatively amicable. Others, however, wouldn't see it like that. She left the palace with only her own belongings and a small sum of money she received as a parting gift. Now she was heading back to her old home, where she once lived with her parents. Ever since their deaths, the house had been empty and unoccupied. Although she had once been engaged before becoming a saint, she harbored no lingering feelings of affection for her ex-fiancé. It was true that they had once genuinely loved each other, but he wasn't interested in a monogamous relationship. Oh. He was born and raised in a different country where it was typical for husbands to take lovers outside of their marriage. That revelation was devastating for Marylight. She simply couldn't wrap her head around it. What will I do now? She muttered to herself. There was a lot of things she wanted to do with her life. She especially wanted to try out new things using her holy powers. There's no need to rush it, though. I've got plenty of time. Marilette's hometown was located a short distance away from the palace. On the outskirts of the town, next to the forest, there stood an old house. Once upon a time, the building had been surrounded by a sea of beautiful flowers, but now the garden was wild and overgrown. Much of the space between each plant was decorated with intricate spiderwebs. Marilette was fond of gardening, but even to her, the state of it was alarming. I'll need to take care of that as soon as possible. With that thought in her mind, she fished her key out of her bag and put a hand on the doorknob. Huh? That was when she noticed the door was slightly ajar. Her first thought was that the house had been burgled. But as far as she knew, there was nothing of value in there. Maybe somebody squatting in there? Maybe there actually was something worth stealing. If there was, it couldn't have been much. Unruffled by the potential break-in, Marilette simply walked inside. Clouds of dust irritated her lungs, sending her into a coughing fit as she made her way further in. Aside from the thick layer of dust covering the place, the furniture was just as it had been left. If she wiped it down, it would be good as new. Marilette nodded to herself, pleased with what she saw. Next, she went to check her bedroom. However, as soon as she stepped inside, she noticed something. There was a child kneeling on the floor, huddled up in some bed sheets. Aw. Oh my, she remarked, looking down at the boy. Ooh, is this the demon prince? That would be curious. He's a child, so I wonder if he ages rapidly. He stared back up at her with big, round, jade-green eyes. They were tinged with a hint of fear, and his small body seemed to be trembling slightly beneath the sheets. Well, hello there, it's nice to meet you. Marilette grinned with a smile, remembering her manners. My name's Marilette. I actually used to live here. Is this your abode? He asked hesitantly. In stark contrast to his appearance, his manner of speech was not at all childlike. Yes, I suppose, but to be honest, I haven't visited in a long time, she explained. How long have you been here? Since yesterday, he said plainly. It was hard to tell through the bundle of sheets, but he looked awfully thin, and his face was covered in dirt. Marilette thought about wiping his face with her handkerchief before realizing that it probably wouldn't do any good without some water to lift it. I know, she smiled. I'll be just a moment, okay? She dashed out of the room and picked up an old knife from the kitchen before heading out to the garden. She took out a drawstring pouch from her bag, then stuck her thumb and forefinger inside before pulling out a tiny seed. She dug a shallow hole in the soil beneath her, then buried the small seed there. After saying a short prayer in front of it, the area where the seed was buried began to shimmer a pale green color. Not a moment later, the sound of loud rustling and wood creaking rang out through the air as a large, thick-stemmed plant suddenly sprouted from the earth, growing taller and taller until huge red flowers bloomed at the tips of the leaves. That was Marilette's power as a saint. Others could control the weather or produce fire as well, but in her case she was able to accelerate the growth of any type of plant. This country was once a very dry land that suffered long periods of drought, but thanks to Marilette's power, the desolate landscape had been transformed into green, grassy plains. I'm sorry about this, but I really appreciate some water right now. She apologized gently before cutting the plant's thick stem in half. With the knife, clear, fresh water gushed from the opening, and Marilette pressed her handkerchief against it. When she returned to the bedroom, she found the child with his nose pressed up against the window, still clutching the bundle of sheets. Oh, okay, so he had been watching her do that. Are you a saint? He asked curiously. I can only make flowers and trees grow, but yes, I am. She nodded. Right, now we can wipe that dirt off your face. She crouched down and rubbed the damp handkerchief against his cheek. The fabric quickly became dirty, but in return, the boy's face was clean. He still needed a bath later, though. More importantly, she needed to get some food in him. She remembered the cookies that a maid at the palace had secretly slipped her on her way out. They should be perfect for someone with a lack of energy. She rummaged them in her bag and took one out to show to the boy. You must be hungry. How about one of these? She suggested. What is it? He added suspiciously. A cookie. They're very sweet and tasty, she beamed. I don't want it, he refused. Perhaps he didn't like sweets? Just as Marilette began to mull over what she could feed him, he suddenly strode over towards the door as though he wanted to leave. I'm sorry for being so inconsiderate. I assumed the house was abandoned. I'll leave so don't worry, he announced. Do you have somewhere to go, though? Marilette worried. The boy simply stood still, giving her an answer. You can stay here as long as you like. I couldn't possibly, but do you really want someone like me in your home? He frowned, deliberately pulling the sheets down to reveal his head. A messy tuft of silver hair appeared, along with 2 horns? Yeah, Demon Prince, hello. Well, then again, you don't know that. They were deep crimson in color, and the tips were slightly curled. Marylet stared at them fixedly, her mouth agape. To avoid her gasp, the boy awkwardly reached for the sheet again with a pained look on his face. Marylet's next words stopped him. "Oh, wow, what lovely horns!" she exclaimed. She had no idea why he had horns, neither did she care. All she knew was that they were her absolute favorite color. The same color as her favorite fruit. At this point, it would take a lot to surprise Marylet. Her first fiancé had an affair, then she found out she was a saint, then she got engaged to the Crown Prince, then got unengaged to the Crown Prince, so who knew what the future held? After going through several major incidents in her life, her heart was not easily shaken. In a way, she'd become numb to sudden revelations. "You think these are lovely?" he asked in disbelief. "Of course, red's my favorite color. Plus they remind me of apples," she grinned. "They remind you of apples?" he said hesitantly. His tone mixed with a hint of both unease and optimism. Then a bright, cheerful laugh escaped him. The boy wouldn't answer any of Marylet's questions, not where he came from, nor why he was in her house in the first place. In fact, he wouldn't reveal any information about himself whatsoever, other than his name, Sirius. Although, perhaps it wasn't a case of simply refusing to tell her anything, it seemed more like he couldn't tell her. "Oh no, don't feel like you need to apologize," Marylet insisted. "You have your reasons, I understand that." "Thank you," he said in a small voice, nibbling at the cookie she'd given him. One way or another, Marylet wanted to help. Most likely Sirius was an orphan. If he had nowhere to go, he might have taken refuge in her house to protect himself from the cold. For a moment she wondered if she should take him to the orphanage. But there was no telling how a child with horns might be treated there. It was unpleasantly easy to imagine how he might end up. Yeah, probably not good. As far as Marylet could tell, Sirius was a half-human and possibly half-monster. In this country, such creatures were thought to bring disaster to the land, that they were relentlessly persecuted. That was why she decided to take him in herself. And if she wanted to earn enough to support 2 people, she needed to find work. Fast. "What are you doing?" Sirius asked inquisitively, blinking at her. At first he thought she was just doing some weeding. Then quickly realized it was something more intensive when she brought out some farming tools that had been lying in storage. She hastily tilled the soil, creating a large patch of fertile land. "I'm making it easier for new flowers and trees to grow here," she explained. With her powers, she could make any kind of plant grow. However, if she did so in an inadequate environment, the plant ended up looking a little sad. On the other hand, as long as she placed the seeds in rich, nutritious soil, her creations grew up to be happy and healthy. She explained that fact to people a couple of times, but back in the palace, no one truly seemed to take an interest in her work. "Nature, please give these seeds the gift of life." She offered up a prayer to the multitude of seeds she had just planted, and within moments, greenery began to stretch into the air. There were apple trees, strawberry plants, a variety of citrus trees, and a sea of beautiful flowers. Swiftly, Marylet got to work on harvesting them. She'd specifically regulated the trees' growth so that they wouldn't grow too tall, which made it much easier to pick the fruit than usual. "How beautiful," Sirius whispered in amazement, staring in admiration. "Isn't it just?" Marylet smiled. "I'm a big fan of these flowers, too." "No, that's not what I meant." He shook his head. "The flowers also look wonderful, but..." Oh boy. Like I said, I think, I'm thinking that demons grow fast and age faster than humans until they get to a certain age, and I guess they stop. But I was calling you beautiful lady, Marylet. "Oh, why, thank you, Sirius," she beamed. To be honest, she was a little suspicious of his definition of beautiful. Her entire body was covered in dirt and sweat. Nevertheless, seeing the gentle smile tugging at Sirius's lips, she decided to simply accept his compliment. From Marylet's point of view, Sirius had a far more charming appearance than she did. Unfortunately, he was still covering his head with sheets so that no one would see his horns, but she'd already witnessed just how gorgeous his dazzling silver hair was. Plus, he had a dainty, feminine face which only added to his charm. He was nothing like Marylet, who had once been told that her appearance was okay, but nothing special. Marylet went into the town a few times to sell the fruit and flowers she had harvested from the garden. However, the most anyone ever did was have a quick look at her selection as they were passing by. She couldn't sell a single thing. Until she started putting out samples, that was. She peeled the fruit and cut them into bite-sized pieces and offered them to the public to try. "Oh, saints, it's delicious. Where on earth did you get them? It's sweet and juicy. I could eat it for the rest of my life. Honestly, I'm speechless. I didn't even know the fruit could be this sweet at this time of year." Each person who sampled the fruit applauded its juicy, ripe flavor and fresh texture. Before she knew it, people were begging to buy her produce. Just as one of her customers said, It was difficult to find sweet fruit during early summer. All the fruit in the market was very sour at the moment. That must have been why people ignored her at first. They just assumed it would be as bad as all the other fruit. However, once word of their sweet taste got around, everyone wanted some. Plus, once people started to take a closer look at her shop, they also noticed that the flowers she sold were even better quality than at the florist's stall. I ain't seen your face around here before. Where'd you come from? Are you married? What? You're single? Even after taking a proper look at her, no one noticed that she was Prince Rufus's ex-fiancée. In fact, the people rarely even spoke about the Crown Princess in general. Having said that, nor did they notice that she used to live in the area as a regular citizen. Even when she used to be a regular citizen, she was an unassuming woman that people never paid much attention to. Huh. So, essentially, she blended in. Hold on. The heck? Hold on, what page is this? Page 23. Page 24. I was thinking we could have stew for dinner tonight. How does that sound to you, Sirius? Marylight asked politely. Stew? What's that? He asked with a furrowed brow. You make it by cooking veggies in a milky soup. The vegetables grow soft and create a warm, comforting flavor. I think you'd like it, she encouraged. Yes, I'll be able to eat that. Apparently there were a lot of things halflings physically couldn't eat. For example, vampire-human halflings felt nauseous when they ate onions or garlic. Makes sense, considering vampires can't have that stuff. And wolf halflings would grow weak if they didn't eat enough meat at mealtimes. That also makes sense. As such, Marylet tried to ask Sirius whether he could eat something before she made it. Gradually, she was building up a list of his diet in her mind. It was lucky that out of the things he could eat, there didn't seem to be anything he was fussy about. It wasn't that he was just being polite because Marylet was kind enough to feed him. Either when he ate, he genuinely seemed to enjoy it, and he all but licked his plate clean. Marylet had been expecting to live a solitary, lonely life after leaving the palace. However, Sirius changed everything. There. Here's your afternoon snack for today, Marylet sang, offering Sirius a plate of peeled apple slices. They were just the right size for him to pop into a small mouth. As she set the plate down, his jade green eyes sparkled like a cave of glittering jewels. Thank you very much, Lady Marylet. He eagerly slid one between his lips and began to chew in small motions. Marylet wanted to make Sirius all sorts of new dishes and show him the variety of the culinary world. But ultimately, he always went back to asking for more of the fruit she grew using her powers. Because he seemed to enjoy it so much, she started to grow more and more different types of fruit, such as different strawberry and grape varieties. She could also sell the excess fruit in town, so she was actually earning quite a lot of money. Thanks to her newfound income, she could make plenty of delicious food for Sirius and also buy a lot of clothes. When they first met, Sirius was nothing but skin and bones, but now he'd put on weight and his cheeks were round and soft like little marshmallows. His way of speaking had also become a little less awkward. Lady Marylet, he piped up, could I ask, is there anything you want, something you've thought about buying, for example? Huh? I don't think so, she replied. Then what about something you'd like to do? Let me think. Looking after Sirius was no trouble to her, and it wasn't as though she was a greedy or materialistic person in the first place. She was quite content with her current situation. She loved gardening, and it was a blessing that she got to make a living doing it. Of course, she still wanted to find ways to grow as many different plants as she could, but for now she was happy enough making sure Sirius was happy and healthy. Right now, I think I'd just like to watch over you as you grow up, she smiled. Alright. I wonder what kind of person you'll become, she commented out loud. Once Sirius became an adult, Marylet had no doubt that he'd have to move to a different country. As things stood, he wasn't even free to walk around town, let alone meet new people. Most likely he'd grow into a brave, dignified young man. Then he'd move to a country that treated halflings well and meet a woman who was just as lovely as he was. Are you going shopping, Lady Marylet? I'd like to come. Thank you, Sirius, but are you sure? She replied, her eyebrows knitting together in concern. Don't you want to finish reading your book? No, I want to help you, he said firmly. And the next moment he marched over to Marylet, took the basket from her hand, and grinned. Marylet returned a smile, overjoyed to see how polite he'd become as he grew up. He was now far taller than... Oh my god, how old is he at this point? How long has it been? He was now far taller than Marylet, and his marshmallow-like cheeks had lost their baby fat to reveal a strong, handsome bone structure. He was still rather thin in build, but there was no missing the solid muscle that stood out from under his skin. His voice had also broken, and it now commanded a low, sonorous tone. Okay, so he's gone into his teenage years. Dang! So, I guess I was right. Demons, half demons or whatever, or full demons, whatever, grow or age a lot faster than humans until they reach adulthood, and then they guess it slows down. One day, his scarlet horns suddenly disappeared. When Marylet asked what happened to them, he simply said, "I thought things would be easier for you this way." At first, she worried he'd cut them off, but thankfully that didn't seem to be the case. He claimed that as he grew, he gained control over growing and shrinking them. Oh, so he could hide them now. It was fortunate since he could walk around town without attracting any untoward attention, but Marylet thought it was a shame. When she told him that, his entire body went rigid for some reason. "Still, you really have grown," she added softly, the words falling out of her mouth of their own accord. "He has." Wow, it's only been 6 months. It had only been half a year since they had met. The reason for his extraordinarily fast growth had to be something to do with being a halfling. Although she could hardly complain, he'd grown to be such a sensible young man after all. Most people would probably be scared of that sheer speed of his growth, but Marylet simply took it in stride. "That's all thanks to you," he murmured gently. "Me?" She blinked. "The fruits you grow are full of strong magical properties. Thanks to that, I managed to absorb all the magic I needed to develop into an adult." "Oh, so he's an adult," he explained. "What?" This was the first she'd heard of this. "My kind grows faster than humans by nature, but from here on out, our aging I thought so! That's what I thought. That once they got to a certain age, their aging process slowed down. That's what I thought happened, and I was right. But from here on out, our aging process slows down dramatically. Yeah, I had a suspicion that your kind grew faster," Marylet nodded, "but I have to say that is a relief. I thought I would have an old man on my hands in a couple years or so." Yeah, that would be kind of odd. And awkward. "Lady Marylet, thank you for caring for me," Sirius murmured in earnest, meeting her gaze as he tightly grasped both her hands. She blinked in surprise. His appearance might have changed beyond recognition, but inside he was almost exactly the same. Looking up at him with an affectionate fondness, Marylet stroked his silvery hair. A few months ago, she did it with no effort whatsoever, but now she had to stretch just to reach the top of his head. Sounds kind of like me. She was certain he'd be able to find a partner who was just as gorgeous as him. She reached up to place both her hands on his cheeks. For a split second, his green eyes seemed to flash red. But Marylet quickly shook herself and forgot about it. She must have been seeing things. "I'm thinking you didn't see things. Like I said, I think he's full demon, not half." Just as Sirius claimed, his rapid growth soon came to a stop. Now he spent his days helping Marylet in all sorts of ways. He assisted her when she went to sell her produce in town, and accompanied her on their regular shopping trip with no complaints. He was a huge help. Even when he was still small, he'd help out as much as he could. In fact, it was probably more than he should have done. Back then, he tried to carry baskets that were heavier than his own body weight, and Marylet was always worried he'd get abducted by some ill-natured stranger when he was out in public. Since Sirius started helping out, Marylet had a feeling her number of female customers had increased. Of course. Sirius wasn't all too sociable when it came to people other than Marylet, though. He was cold when they spoke to him, and he always swiftly turned down women's advances, no matter how beautiful they were. Even so, that was part of why they liked him, apparently. There were also others that came not only to see Sirius, but Marylet too. "I wonder why they bother with me when you're right there," she commented casually one day. They were out in the garden picking apples for the apple pie that Marylet planned to make for their afternoon snack. "What makes you say that?" Sirius blinked. "Well, I'm me," she replied with a chuckle. While the man helping her was young, gorgeous, and fit, she was pushing 30. She couldn't help but feel remarkably plain next to Sirius. "I thought people would find it weird to ask a man out when his mother? Really? You think of him as... You think the mother is standing next to him?" she wondered. "Those ladies don't seem to think you're my mother, though," Sirius replied with a frown. "Maybe they think we're siblings, then?" Now that the age gap between them had become much smaller, that made more sense. Not that they looked anything alike. In that case, maybe they have a thing for that. Maybe they... He trailed off. "No, you know what? Never mind." He shook his head and instead walked over to an apple tree. With one light touch of his palm to the tree, a skinny round fruit tumbled down from the branches. As it fell, he moved his fingers again, and the apple floated through the air before landing in Marylet's palm. Looking on in sad astonishment, a huge smile lit up her face. "Sirius, I never knew you had holy powers, too." Those are more demonic powers." "Yeah, no, those aren't holy powers. It's sorcery. Saints find their power if God decides to bless them with it. In the demon clan, though, anyone can use magic," Sirius replied with an awkward smile. "Wait," Marylet hesitated. "Does that mean you're..." Hello! The horn should have been a dead giveaway there. Demons were a completely different race from monsters, humans, or halflings. Doy. Girl, why did you think demon first of all? Because if I see someone with a pair of horns, I'm going to instantly think a devil or demon. But that's just me. For one thing, their level of knowledge and magic was far superior. They had enough power to take over the world if they felt like it. Marilla had even heard that a particularly strong demon could overthrow a country on their own. He's even more powerful than I thought. Wow. So she's not surprised with that. She murmured to herself as they walked back into the house. Sirius froze with absolute shock. Don't you fear me? He asked in a muted tone. No. Why would I? I'm a demon. In general, humans fear us. Does that matter? You've never done anything to hurt either me or the townspeople. You're a very kind and considerate young man, demon or not. There was absolutely no reason to be scared of Sirius. Marillette would proudly say that without a second thought. Sirius remained in thoughtful silence for a few moments before giving a small sigh. I never did tell you about why I was in your house that day, did I? Nope, but if you'd rather not talk about it, then please don't force yourself to. It's all right. I wanted to tell you more about my life, he insisted. Recently, there had been a power struggle among us demons. Unfortunately, I got caught up in it. The enemy forces killed my entire family, and I almost met my end. But I managed to escape the palace. I ran and ran with my pursuers not far behind until I eventually arrived in the town. Palace? Why didn't she hello? He just said he was in the palace. Yeah. That must have been terrible for you, she remarked sorrowfully. There was a particular word in his story that made her raise... Yes, thank you. Made her raise an eyebrow, but she was far more concerned by how much pain he must have been through. He must have been awfully lonely. When she remembered what he used to be like half a year ago, tears began to form in her pale blue eyes. Sirius watched in shock as tears tumbled down her cheeks, and she moved forward to wrap him up in a tight embrace. Marillette, what are you doing? I can't help it. You've had it so tough, she said tearfully. I'm sorry, but I'd really appreciate it if you took a step back, he suggested in a strained voice. What? Oh, oops, I wasn't thinking. Did I squeeze you too tight, she worried. Not in the slightest. In fact, I'd love it if you squeezed me even tighter. I just wasn't mentally prepared, he chuckled awkwardly. That time there was no mistaking it. Marillette definitely saw his irises darken into a deep crimson. Oh, boy. I'm guessing when his emotions possibly overcome him, that could possibly happen. She knew because she blinked several times, only to be met with that same scarlet gaze. She was absolutely transfixed by it. I didn't mean to alarm you, but your eyes have gone red. Is that bad? Is that a sign of sickness? Listen to me, Lady Marillette, he said seriously, ignoring her questions. Oh boy. This is gonna be interesting. He drew closer and closer to her, so close that she thought he might... What? What did you think of that? That he might kiss her. She automatically backed away, but he caught her hands and pulled her close again. You've always doted on me as though I were your son or a brother. Oh, boy. Oh, come on, you got cock-blocked there. However, I don't feel the same way. Ever since the day I met you, I've always... Yep, you got cock-blocked there. Knock, knock, knock. Oh, we have a guest, Marillette exclaimed shaken. Just as Sirius began to whisper in a low, smooth tone, the sound of someone knocking at the door sent them flying apart. Marillette rushed to answer, but Sirius followed right on her heel. Sirius, what is it? I'll go, he said firmly. Why? Were you expecting someone? She asked before suddenly freezing in her tracks. Oh no, I forgot about the apple pie. I need to make a start on it before serving guests. Don't worry about that. He isn't worthy of even one bite of your apple pie, Lady Marillette. With that bitter comment, Sirius proceeded to open the door. On the other side, Marillette saw a boy with black hair and a heart-breaking look of exhaustion on his face. Finally. Lord Sirius, I found you, he panted. Raven, why are you here? Sirius scowled. Why am I here? You're so rude, the boy Raven scoffed in disbelief. Obviously I'm here to take you back. Why else? You have any idea how much I've been through to... He couldn't quite finish a sentence before his eyes rolled back into his head and he collapsed onto the floor right in front of them. His stomach growled. His stomach emitted an extraordinarily loud gurgle. He was fast asleep and began to grumble and mumble wearily, and Marillette definitely caught the word hungry. Sirius swiftly reached down and hooked his arms under Raven's body before easily hauling him up. He carried him over to the sofa and carefully laid him there. Without another moment's hesitation, Marillette began drafting up a meal plan in her head. Soon after Raven collapsed, Marillette went shopping for food. According to Sirius, much like him, Raven ate just about everything. However, he did have a slight preference for meat. So Marilet bought some steak especially for him. When she got home, though, Sirius didn't seem all too pleased about her purchases. You don't need to go so far for him, he complained in a huff. But isn't he your friend? Marilet replied. I'd feel terrible if I didn't cook him a proper meal. He's not my friend, Sirius sighed. Either way, he seems to be important to you, am I wrong? Even though Sirius had done pretty much nothing but complain about Raven since he showed up, he was very quick to carry him inside the house and lay him down somewhere more comfortable after he passed out. Although he did suggest dumping him in the garden if Marilet was opposed to lending him the sofa, which, of course, she wasn't. Sirius's jade-green gaze shifted to give Marilet a dubious look before he answered her. He used to be my guard. His command of magic is hilariously bad, but he is a magnificent sprinter, so he was tasked with aiding my escape. Does that mean he was with you when you ran away? She asked. Indeed. However, we were eventually separated. I thought he was dead, he added solemnly. Thank goodness he found you. Marilet had no doubt that Raven had a harrowing story to tell, too. He looked just as weak and malnourished as Sirius did when she first met him. Apparently, Raven was also fond of apples, so Marilet decided to make some apple compote. A simple dessert made by dicing some apples, then mixing them with sugar, lemon juice, and water in a saucepan. The sugary scent of apples and lemons wafted through the kitchen and seemed to stir Raven from his deep sleep. Well, of course, if the guy's hungry, he's gonna be awake by that. He opened his eyes, but they were still completely rolled back as though he were only half conscious. Something smells really good, he mumbled sleepily. Oh, Raven, you're fainted, but are you all right? Marilet fretted, looking over her shoulder from the kitchen. In fact, is he even awake? I don't think so, Sirius sighed. Hey, Raven, wake up! You're embarrassing yourself in front of Lady Marilet. In the next moment, something truly astounding occurred. Before Marilet could even get a word in edgewise, Sirius grabbed the top of Raven's head and violently clutched a fistful of hair. Raven's eyes immediately snapped open, and a terrified tremble seized his limbs as he shook Sirius off. Then he backed away so fast that he ended up plastering himself to the ceiling. How the fuck did you do that? Marilet blinked. He screamed. I don't know what happened, but please spare me. I'll do anything, just don't kill me. Who said anything about killing you? Although if you don't pull yourself together, I just might, Sirius growled. No, I don't want to die. Raven suddenly froze, his wide eyes fixed on Sirius. Wait, Lord Sirius, is that you? Wait, Lord Sirius, is that you? And why am I clinging to the ceiling like some kind of spider? I'm kind of wondering that myself. Apparently, he finally found his way back to reality. He was clearly in shock, but even so, he landed on his feet without so much as a wobble. Then, when he met Marilet's gaze, his eyes narrowed in suspicion. Who are you? My name's Marilet. I bought you some steak earlier. Would you like some? She asked quickly, brushing his suspicion aside. Really? Steak? His eyes shone with excitement, and the word please was written all over his face. Yep, Marilet grinned. Sirius told me you love meat, so I thought it might cheer you up. For dessert, I'm making some apple compote, too. Compote. What's that? Compote. You make it by cooking fruit in a sugary syrup. You can eat it just like that, or bake it in a fruit pie, she explained. Sounds amazing, Raven marveled. She could almost imagine drool hanging from his mouth. But is it really okay for me to eat something like fancy? I thought the same thing, but apparently Lady Marilet wants to treat you. You should be grateful for her kindness, Sirius demanded bluntly. Maybe you should just be kind to yourself, he snapped back with a pout on his lips. Raven must have been about 15 or 16. His voice had broken, but his face still had a round sort of youth to it. By the way, Lord Sirius, when did you get so big? Raven continued, scanning him from head to toe. You're taller than me now, and you're actually really scary when you're angry. Yeah. I have Lady Marilet to thank for that. Thinking I was an orphan, she took raising me into her own hands, Sirius said, his tone much softer than a few moments ago. You kinda are, considering what you just told her, that your entire family was killed. So yeah, you kind of are an orphan. He gently took Marilet's hand and squeezed it. The look he gave her was about the furthest thing from familial love, though Marilet didn't seem to realize it. Raven's jaw twitched. Oh. Okay, so I know what he was essentially going to say before they got interrupted. He essentially was going to tell her that he thought of her as a romantic partner, or essentially as a wife. I never pegged you for the affectionate type, Raven remarked, bemused. What do you mean? Sirius is always like this, Marilet said, her voice colored with surprise. What? Raven frowned. I mean, he's never been an outright bully, but let's just say he was never soft on anyone. When I first met him, he was certainly very wary, she conceded. Still, I sort of wish I could have met him back then. It was more of an offhand comment to herself because she was genuinely curious as to how Raven remembered him. Oh, I don't know about that, Raven muttered with a strained smile hanging his head. Tears rolled down Raven's cheeks when he took the first bite of his freshly grilled steak. I'd never eaten meat this good before, he sobbed. I'm so happy I could die right this second. How far have I gotten? I didn't even think to check. Okay, I'm gonna have to shave some time off anyway, so I'll just finish this page. As he ate, he kept repeating those same phrases as well as other words to that effect. He chewed each bite furiously, chasing after the meat flavor each mouthful could offer. The vegetable soup and the soft, fluffy bread were awarded the same sort of praise, and he kept asking for more. Although Marilet was touched by his reaction, she was beginning to worry about him. Don't eat too fast, alright? At this rate, you'll give yourself a terrible tummy ache. You don't need to worry about him, Lady Marilet. His stomach's far stronger than you might think. He can ingest poison with no trouble, after all. Sirius smiled. Well, that's a relief, she replied after a moment. She wasn't entirely sure how she was supposed to react to that. Anyway, Raven, how did you know I was here? Sirius asked, curious. Raven began, stuffing his cheeks full of bread. I followed traces of your magic. With a big, strong demon like you're pretty easy to detect. Marilet wasn't sure how it was done, but apparently using magic to seek people out was easy among the demons. I bet that comes in handy. Yeah. Children have less magic energy, though, so they're harder to find, Raven continued. In other words, Sirius was now brimming with strong magical energy. You've been taking care of Lord Sirius while I struggled to find him, right, Marilet? I can't thank you enough. He bowed his head low in gratitude. Oh, please, you don't have to bow or anything. It's been a pleasure looking after him. Every day with him has been great fun, and I mean that. If I didn't have him, I would have been very alone. If anything, I'm the one who should be thanking them. The house would have felt extremely empty had she been there alone, with the absence of her parents more apparent than ever. She still probably would have kept on living as usual, though. She would have pushed through the loneliness and found a way to make her day-to-day life fulfilling, one way or another. Even so, it would have been far gloomier than the happy, joyful life she was now living with Sirius. Are you single then, Marilet? I sort of just assumed you were married, Raven admitted. Huh, the townspeople say the same thing every now and again, she laughed dryly. They ask if my husband's doing all right back at home. Exactly, I think the same thing, Raven nodded enthusiastically. Sirius immediately shot a wrathful glare at him. What do you mean by that? Depending on how you answer, your life may be at stake, he threatened. Well, she's so calm and collected, you know. She's got that wifely aura about her. Sirius fell completely silent. Lord Sirius, I bet you just thought that's hot, didn't you? Raven teased with a sly grin. I never thought such a thing. The faster you deny it, the more suspicious you are, he jeered. No, I was just thinking how I'd get rid of her husband. He said seriously, his tone dark. Oh. Raven's smile froze in place. Oh, yeah, you're terrifying. However, Marilet's next words possessed the power to freeze the air of the room itself. Oh. It's actually a little bit true, though. What? Huh? The two of them look like their very reality had just been shaken. Don't you remember, Sirius? I must have told you before. I was engaged to Prince Rufus, and what in the blue blazes? You've never told me that. Never! Sirius hollered, putting his hands over both of Marilet's shoulders. She could feel his fingers shaking. This might be the first time I've ever heard him raise his voice like that. Now that she thought back on it, indeed, she couldn't recall ever discussing it with him. Oh, sorry, I forgot, she admitted with a bashful laugh. How could something that important slip your mind? Sirius despaired. We broke off the engagement after both Prince Rufus and I came to a mutual understanding, so I wasn't all too bothered by it. Engagement wasn't exactly the kind of thing people discussed with children, so she decided not to tell him. Then, by the time Sirius grew up, she didn't think about it too much anymore. Apparently, it came as much bigger shock to him than she would have expected. Lady Marilet, he began, deadly serious. You should have told me earlier. If I had have known, I would have hunted down this... He would have killed the poor guy. Oh, boy. Hound down this Rufus and... Whoa there, Raven interrupted him with a shout before he could say anything that would get him in prison for treason. He then turned to Marilet. You must have been through a lot, Lady Marilet. That's tough. Seeing the warm, gentle woman before them, no one would have thought that she had once been engaged to the nation's crown prince, not even for a second. Raven glanced around the room, his brow furrowed in confusion. But, Lady Marilet, you're not a noble, are you? How did you manage to catch the prince's eye? He asked. What are they going to say when they find out she's a saint? I thought the same thing at first, she laughed. However, it turns out His Majesty arranged our engagement purely based on me being a saint. Oh dear. Hold up. You're a saint? Raven gasped. He'd long abandoned his stake and was now fixedly staring at her in amazement. Sirius, meanwhile, was completely absorbed in his plans to overthrow the prince. Oh, he did not even think about that. Marilette decided to tell him her story from beginning to end. They listened with the same gobsmacked look on their faces, and when it finally got to the crucial point, "But why did he break off the engagement in the first place?" Raven asked, incredulous. "Oh, he said I'm too old now." More stunned silence. "Right. That's it," Sirius announced, standing from the table and slamming his palms down on the wood. "Let's kill the prince at once. You know what they say, strike while the iron's hot." No. You don't say that." A huge menacing grin spread across his face as he said it. On the other hand, Raven clapped a hand over his mouth, frozen in disbelief. Question marks were written all over Marilette's face as she studied their reactions. What's bothering you both so much?" she hedged. "What's bothering us? Everything! The whole thing is just plain nasty," Raven frowned. "I have to say I agree, Lady Marilette. Do you honestly believe that was an amicable breakup?" Sirius asked lowly, his voice strained. Marilette nodded firmly. All in all, she was glad she managed to avoid marrying a man she didn't love. She didn't think that marriages made for political or financial security were necessarily a bad thing, but personally, she would much rather spend the rest of her life happily in love. That's why she was relieved it was all over. But don't get me wrong, I'm glad you broke up. It would have been awful if that scumbag of a prince stole you away. However, his reasoning for breaking the engagement off is abhorrent. He deserves to die 1,000 deaths. Sirius enunciated clearly. "Exactly," Raven piped up. "They made you become Rufus's fiancé against your will and then cut you off because of your age? Who cares if they're royalty? That's messed up." "Oh," Marilette wavered. Sirius was one thing, but she was surprised to hear a boy she'd only just met in such an outrage. He seemed to truly resent the royal family for what they did to her. Raven sighed, his eyes swimming with angry tears. "Seriously," he huffed, "they think that if they have magic items they won't need any help from the saints anymore? The arrogance is unbelievable." "I completely agree on that one." "I heard the devices allow anyone to use the same powers as a saint, but," Marilette recalled. "Yeah, but they need magic devices to do anything. There's a big difference between them and you. You can use holy power without any help at all. You're amazingly talented," Raven insisted. "You really think so?" Her sky-blue eyes shone with hesitation. Although she had been proclaimed the crown princess when they found out she was a saint, no one had ever given her such high praise before. Even when using her powers for the sake of the nation, it was a given that she give herself up and use the holy energy bestowed upon her for the people and the king. She was there to fulfill her duty, that was all. It was nothing worthy of praise. That was what she'd always been told, back at the palace anyway. Raven, though, claimed that the exact opposite was true. "I heard rumor about a saint in this country working really hard to increase the amount of fertile land and greenery over the past few years, but that was you, right? Just tossing a saint aside once they're done with their powers is like picking a fight with God." Raven said, shaking his head in frustration. "I'm assuming that demons don't have a adverse reaction to holy magic, I guess?" "Not if I get to them first," Sirius threatened in a low growl, his anger still ablaze. "The nerve! I simply can't understand why would they cast aside such a beautiful, loving woman such as yourself, and for such a self-serving reason. Those people are probably why you have such a distorted view of your own experiences." "It doesn't feel at all distorted to me, though. Have I lost sight of the situation?" Marilette began to wonder. "To be frank, yes. Very much so. Oh dear." "Uh-oh, I'm starting to worry this saint's a lost cause," Raven said, his eyes glazing over as he devoured the remainder of his now cold steak in one mouthful. He chomped away eagerly and gulped it down before continuing. "How about you come back with us, Marilette?" "What do you mean?" She blinked. "I'm officially inviting you to our home country. Not because you're a saint or anything, as Lord Sirius's savior. You'll be very welcome at the palace. Plus you can live your days in luxury. We can provide anything you could ever want," Raven suggested excitedly. "But what if I don't want luxury?" she mused. She was entirely content with her current daily life, and she had no desire to be worshipped or treated as royalty. Raven was only trying to be nice, so she felt bad refusing it, but his proposal wasn't appealing to her at all. Sirius turned to his servant and peered into his eyes searchingly. "Does that mean the Civil War's over?" he asked, his voice slightly shaky. "Do you really think I'd be so casual about inviting her if it wasn't?" Raven huffed. "Yep, it's over. My familiar told me the news. We successfully managed to subdue the rebel forces and all the ringleaders are due to be executed. It sounds like His Majesty is eagerly awaiting your return, Lord Sirius." "All right," Sirius nodded before returning to Marilette, his eyes trained solely on her. Lady Marilet, I don't believe you can ever be truly happy in this country. Won't you come back to my homeland with me? I'm not sure what to say. Of course, I wish I could stay with you longer, Sirius. You're a lovely young man, but... She smiled brightly and gently reached to stroke his hair. However, before her fingertips met his silvery locks, Sirius grabbed hold of her hand. He tenderly brought it down and then pressed his lips to the back of her hand. I'm not as lovely as you think I am. I only act that way for you and you alone. Oh, here we go. He confessed. He confessed. I knew it. Oh, boy. Oh, and what's Rufus gonna think when he finds out his former fiancé is now gonna be the Demon King's fiancé? He's gonna feel annoyed. Oh, it's gonna be fun. Because I love you from the bottom of my heart. Marilet froze, her eyes wide as she stared blankly at him. A bitter smile tugged at Sirius's lips. I knew it. You had no idea. Yeah, she's kinda dense. He chuckled sadly. If you'd realized, I expect you would have been less touchy-feely with me. I'm sorry? She stuttered unsurely. No, don't apologize, he shook his head. I'm the one who went and fell in love with you. It's completely my own fault. In fact, it's shameful. You were just doing your best to take care of me while I had ulterior motives. Wait, you had ulterior motives? Wait, Sirius, please don't look so sad. I don't think it's shameful at all, Marilet said with pleading eyes. Sirius returned her gaze in surprise, his jade-green irises shining with a sudden hope. What? You don't think it's weird? He blinked. Of course not. I'm really happy you feel that way. But, his brow furrowed, do you understand that I absolutely intend on making you my wife? Huh? How did you not get that when he said he loves you with at the bottom of his heart? That's usually saying I love you in a romantic way. Girl, you are dense. You are dense. Now was Marilet's turn to blink vacantly. As soon as Sirius saw that expression on her face, he realized that she thought he was professing a deep platonic affection. The glimmer of hope in his eyes instantly vanished. Oh no. But surely we're too far apart in age for that, Marilet pointed out. Rather than how either of them felt, that was the first problem that occurred to her. Age was the reason her engagement broke down, after all. Worst of all, it was something Marilet could never fix, no matter how hard she tried. Even if Sirius had no problem with it right now, it was possible that one day he would grow tired of her and lose whatever feelings he had for her. I think you're probably just mistaking platonic love for romantic love, too, she said gently. Once you snap out of it, you'll only regret choosing me. This was for both of their sakes. It was best to correct him now before his love turned to resentment. She smiled slightly as she tried to shake her hand free from Sirius. However, he managed to keep a tight enough grip to hold her in place, but not tight enough to hurt her. Lady Marilet, from my point of view, our age makes no difference, he said seriously. I'm sure that's not true. Oh? His eyes suddenly turned sad. Could it be that you have a distaste for... Ah! Older! He's older than her now! What? Something wasn't right here. With confusion clear on her face, Marilet turned the question back on him. What would that matter? I must have forgotten to mention it, he sighed. I'm sorry, I'll be turning 80? How fast did he age? How do demons live? Good lord! 80 years old? Yo, what? She found her head spinning. Sirius had lived more than twice as long as her? As she stood there speechless, Raven awkwardly cleared his throat. It varies from person to person, but in general, demons have a very long lifespan. I might look young to you, but I'm over 50 years old. Jesus! Raven explained. I actually grew faster than Lord Sirius. My voice broke first, too. Sirius's eyes narrowed slightly at that last part. Is that really something worth boasting about? He grumbled. Well, when I'm up against a big tough guy like you, I gotta take all the wins I can get, he grinned. Anyway, Lady Marilet, Sirius began, brushing Raven off completely. Now that your concerns have been addressed, is something I'd like to make very clear. He cleared his throat and spoke in the clearest voice he could muster. I do not care what age you are, nor... He won't go for you if you look too young, though, Raven piped up. Raven, shut up, please. Gotcha. Sirius rolled his eyes and looked back to Marilet before continuing. Nor do I care whether you're a saint or simply a normal woman. Do you understand? His voice was soft and warm. Marilet nodded slowly. The things he was saying had a dreamlike quality to them. After all she'd been through, could she really believe him? It was all she ever wanted to hear, but now that was really happening, she wasn't sure what to do. Not once had Rufus said anything like that to her, not even as flattery. Something warm and fuzzy spread through the inside of her chest as she listened to him. Okay, so hopefully he's being a little more clear with her. I love you. I love you so much. For you, I'd burn this godforsaken country to the ground. Just say the word. No, she's not going to tell you that. No, I don't think it's a good idea. She tried to deter him. Are you sure? But if you have any lingering feelings for that awful prince, I won't hesitate to obliterate him, he declared with a sly smirk. I don't think she had any feelings for him in the first place, because she wouldn't be so okay with it after. It's been, what, 6 months? Raven paled as he looked on from the side, realizing the full extent of Sirius's possessive nature. Oh dear. It was going so well up until that point, Raven said in a strained voice. Why'd you have to make that last part so scary? Scary? How so? Sirius snarled. What do you mean, how? Saying you'll destroy her ex-fiancé along with her homeland isn't a comforting thing to hear. You're a tyrant. I mean, look at her. She's terrible. Eek. Raven let out a small yelp when he glanced over at Marylet. In the aftermath of Sirius's fiercely and perhaps violently possessive confusion, or passionate confusion, Marylet was rooted to the spot and her pale blue eyes were swimming with huge tears. I'm guessing tears of happiness? I don't think she's scared of him. I think she's happy. Hold on, how far have I gotten? Good lord. Okay, I gotta stop. I'll make part 2. I'll see you guys next time.